Sundown bled over the mesas like a wound that wouldn't close. The freight wagon rattled into Harrow's End, boards squealing, iron rims barking sparks. Men drifted from the saloon like flies from syrup. A chalkboard leaned on the hitch rail, letters big and mean, mail order bride, unclaimed, auction at sundown. They lowered me, as if I were freight, bare feet to dust, dressed stiff with travel grime. I kept my fingers locked around the little oval of tin and glass, the cracked locket. Inside, a pressed violet thin as breath and a broken sliver of a photograph. Not enough face to be a person. I told myself not to tremble. The deputy with the sunburned nose swung down. "Stage her," he said like I was lumber. He shook a loop in his rope. Laughter gusted. A miner asked how much for a kiss, then named a figure he didn't own. Another man flipped my locket open, sniffed the violet, and grinned at the emptiness. Heat climbed my throat like fire in dry grass. I counted knots in the rail and kept my mouth shut. From the assay office, a bell clanged. Shift change or warning, I couldn't tell. The deputy took my elbow. Men made a passage, eyes hungry for sport. I could smell sour beer and boot leather. He tugged. Dust slid under my heels. The rope licked my wrists like a promise. Then I saw him. A tall shape leaned against the rail as if carved by weather. Had Brimlow, jaw cut from something that didn't apologize. A quiet around him like winter. He didn't speak at first. Just unbuttoned his coat with a steady hand, like a man about to ford water he knew well. A bottle sailed and broke near his boot. He didn't look down. He looked at me, and the looking landed like a hand to the shoulder, weight, steadiness, belief. He stepped in close. Oilskin swung over my shoulders, heavy as rain, warm from his body. The smell of saddle soap and wind lived in it. He bent to my ear and said what no one had said to me in years. "Hold fast," he said. Not loudly. For me, coins rang bright in the dust. He laid them on the rail, then more in the deputy's palm until laughter thinned into calculation. "Seat," he said. Not a question. The deputy stalled, then produced a crumpled claim chit. Men booed at the lack of spectacle. The sheriff watched from the saloon door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mercer," someone whispered. The name moved through the crowd like wind through paper flags. Mercer's hand never touched his gun. It didn't need to. His quiet arranged the street. My knees went watery when the deputy let go. I folded the coat at my throat. The locket hid under the collar, the violet crushed but stubborn. The crowd pressed for a better look at what wasn't happening. The sheriff tipped his hat as if I danced for him. We backed away. One step, another. Men parted or didn't, but he made space by being something they didn't want to test. "Walk," he said. I walked. Dust climbed our hems. Spurs whispered. The bell clanged again, thin. Mercer lifted me onto a roan. He swung up behind, the coat a roof over us. The horse tested east, then west, then chose the black cut of the canyon road. Town turned to noise and smell, then to memory with teeth. I looked back once. The sheriff still leaned in his doorway, arms folded, smiling. He didn't follow. He didn't have to. Wind combed my hair. The locket struck my collarbone, stubborn heartbeat. We cleared the last shack, and shadow swallowed us. Mesas lifted like ships. "Why do they let us ride?" I asked, my voice small in the coat's dark. He didn't answer. He listened to the desert like a man reading a clock by touch. Because it was a joke, I thought. Jokes draw crowds. Punchlines land later, out where there are no witnesses and the dust drinks what it's given. The canyon opened like a throat. The bell, or the memory of it, kept ringing in my ribs, and I wondered whose joke I wore, and what price his quiet had paid to buy me time. The desert at night was iron and silence. Cole Mercer's roan stepped careful, hooves whispering through powder dust as if the earth might wake angry. Behind them, lanterns swayed, drunken fireflies chasing what they didn't understand. The canyon wind smelled of stone, sage, and a woman's fear. Eliza clung to his coat like breath itself. Every jolt burned her ribs raw from the long wagon ride. Her throat rasped with dust, but she didn't ask for water. Humiliation still pressed hot against her skin, the laughter, the hands, the rope. Cole turned his head just once. A flick of the chin told her to stay low. He read the land the way some men read prayer books, rock ledges, wind marks, the hush of a place where nothing grew. He angled the roan off the trail, into scrub thick enough to hide a sin. The posse behind them whooped, more for sport than vengeance. He stopped in a hollow cut by old rain, dropped from the saddle, and passed her the canteen. "Small sips," he said. His voice was gravel rubbed smooth. She drank, slow, feeling life return to her tongue. He tore a strip of jerky, handed it over. "Chew steady," that was all. No comfort. Just survival offered plain. When the wind shifted, he led the horse behind a rise, crouched low, and pressed his palm to the earth. He could feel vibration, the rhythm of hooves on the main track. They were closer than he liked. He scanned the dark, eyes narrowing at a choke point of basalt ahead. Without warning, he caught her waist, lifted her up onto a shoulder-high ledge. His hands were sure, respectful, but strong enough that she didn't breathe until her boots touched stone again. "Quiet now," he whispered. They crawled on hands and knees, elbows scraping dust. The locket thudded soft against her chest with every motion. Below, the posse passed, lanterns swinging like drowned stars. Laughter floated up, mean, careless, already bored. A coyote yipped once, sharp and lonely, and the sound was swallowed whole by a canyon. When it was safe, Cole dropped down first, landing light. He reached up a hand. She hesitated. He said only, "Trust me." She did. They moved until the stars shifted west, until her legs trembled and the night smelled of iron and frost. Cole led the roan to a slope where cottonwoods etched black fingers against a pale horizon. A seep trickled down the clay. He caught it in a dented cup, waited for it to fill slow as mercy. When it finally did, he handed it to her without taking a drop for himself. The water was cold enough to sting. She drank it all and felt guilt twist with gratitude. The locket lay open in her palm. The violet inside had crumbled into dust-colored petals. She closed it again, holding it near her heart as if the metal might warm. Cole crouched by the horse, hands moving in ritual silence. He drew a length of horsehair rope from his saddlebag, coiling it neat, each loop perfect. In the half-light, it gleamed like a sermon spoken to no one. She watched him, studying the way the world obeyed his quiet. This man who'd bought her freedom with coin and courage now worked like a ranch hand mending time itself. He didn't ask who she was, didn't ask what crime had put her on that wagon. His silence was not indifference. It was protection. At last he looked up. "We ride north," he said. "No fire." When she tried to return the coat, he shook his head. "Night'll steal heat from bone." That was final. False dawn crawled up the cliffs, gray first, then gold bleeding through. Eliza's breath smoked white in the cold. Behind them, far off, a lantern still flickered, then vanished. She turned the locket in her palm, feeling the small weight of its secret. Why had he helped her? Did he know the men who'd laughed at her pain? Or was he running from the same devils, hiding behind the same silence? The roan stamped once, restless for daylight. Cole adjusted his hat, scanning the horizon, unreadable as stone. Somewhere in the east, the wind shifted again, carrying voices or maybe only ghosts. He swung into the saddle, offered his hand. Eliza took it, the coat wrapping her again like a promise she didn't yet believe. They rode on toward the north, the canyon fading behind them, the world ahead unclaimed and cruel, but theirs, for one more hour of mercy. The prairie burned red beneath the noon sun, dust lifted like ghosts, twisting into columns that vanished as quick as memory. Cole Mercer rode ahead, his hat pulled low, his shadow long over the parched ground. Behind him, Eliza swayed in the saddle, dizzy from heat and sleeplessness, clutching her cracked locket like it might steady the world. They came over a rise and saw it, Hardpan Ranch, crouched low beneath a windmill that turned slow as prayer. The sound of it, metal on wind, was the first human thing she'd heard that didn't mock her. The ranch looked half dead, board silvered by sun, corral leaning like tired bones. But smoke curled from a chimney, and where there's smoke, there's food or trouble. Cole swung down, helped her dismount without meeting her eyes. He led the roan to the stable, unlatched a gate, and started mending it before anyone asked. Work was his language. A woman with gray hair in a braid limped out from the cookhouse, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes were narrow, shrewd, but kind in their corners. "Mercer," she said. "Didn't think you'd crawl back here." He nodded once. "Just passing." Her gaze moved to Eliza, took in the torn hem, the coat too big for her shoulders, the way she kept one hand over her chest like hiding a wound. "You hungry, girl?" Eliza swallowed dust. "Yes, ma'am. Inside, the air smelled of beans, soap, and iron pots. The woman, May Quinn, she said, handed her a tin basin and a bar of lye. "Wash first. Don't matter what men think. Clean skin makes a spine." Eliza scrubbed until the chalk marks from Harrow's End ran pink down the drain. Her arms burned, but when she looked in the cracked mirror, she didn't see Freight anymore. She saw someone return from the dead. May brought her a calico dress, faded but whole. "Belonged to someone didn't need it long," May said, too flat to invite questions. Eliza buttoned it slow, feeling its history like a ghost against her skin. Then she pressed the violet flat again between the locket's halves. It had gone brittle, the color of old bruise, but it was still hers. Outside, voices rose. 2 young men leaned against the corral rail, same smirk, same cold mirth. "Jeb," said one. "Or maybe Rook," said the other. Didn't matter. They looked like reflections in mean water. They watched her too long, until May's limp thudded closer, and they turned away. By sundown, a tall man in clean boots rode in, Tyrell Thatch. His shirt was white, too white for a man who worked land like this. He dismounted slow, measuring Cole with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, look who the dust blew home," he said. Then to Eliza, "The one they sold in Harrow's End?" Heard it was a sight. Cheap entertainment. The laughter that followed died fast when Cole looked up. Something cold slid through the room. Even the windmill seemed to hold its breath. Supper passed in uneasy quiet. Cole fixed a hinge, said little. May watched him like a woman counting old sins. When darkness fell, the windmill began its hymn again, metal sighing into the empty miles. Cole carried a cot into the tack room and set it down near the saddle wall. "Sleep here," he said. "It's dry." He laid a folded blanket at her feet, then set down a tiny derringer, blued steel and pearl handle, no bigger than a sparrow. "In case." No lecture, no warning. Just that. He left before she could thank him. In the silence, the coat hung over a peg, smelling of dust and rain. Outside, Boots crossed the yard, slow, deliberate, too light for Cole, too late for chores. She held the derringer in both hands, the barrel cold as trust. The locket pressed into her chest like a heartbeat she didn't trust anymore. She whispered to the violet inside, voice small but steady. "I will not be made into laughter again." The windmill groaned and the boots faded. Still, she lay awake, wondering why Cole Mercer had brought her straight into a house that bore the name Thatch. The same name printed on the letter that sent her west to humiliation. And what in God's wide silence he was planning to do about it. Dawn scraped a thin band of peachlight across the corral rails, soft as mercy. Wind carried the smell of hay, horse sweat, and the far-off ghost of rain. May Quinn was already up, stirring a pot that hissed over the stove. "Idle hands invite ghosts," she said, handing Eliza a dented pail. "So we'll give yours something better to do," Eliza obeyed. Water to fetch from the pump, flour to knead until her shoulders burned. The rhythm of doing, draw, pour, scrub, breathe, washed some of the noise from her head. Each motion dulled the echo of that crowd in Harrow's End, the jeers that had made her skin feel borrowed. By mid-morning, her hands were raw but steady. Cole moved through the yard like the wind that shaped it, quiet, deliberate, everywhere. He showed her how to work the harness oil into cracked leather until it gleamed, how to check a cinch for twist, how to read weather from the color of the western clouds. "Trust your feet," he said. Then later, while she reached for a dropped brush, "Use the fence line when you're unsure." Another time, stirring the fire. "Keep to windward. Smoke lies." Each sentence landed like a nail tapped true, meant to last longer than the day. The ranch itself felt like a throat that wouldn't clear. Jeb and Rook lounged by the corral, guns flashing in the sun as they shot bottles off fence posts. Their laughter had that slick sound men used when they wanted to remind a woman she was visible. Eliza ignored them, though she could feel their stares like burrs against her back. May saw it too but said nothing. Words were scarce here, and the wrong ones could get you buried quick. When the yearling screamed, it cut through the noon heat like lightning. Cole was already running. Eliza followed, skirts tangling her legs. The colt had tangled its hind leg in rusted wire, blood bright against the pale dust. Cole dropped to one knee, knife flashing clean through the wire, then pressed his hand against the wound. "Hold this," he said. She dropped beside him before she could think, pressing cloth against the torn flesh. Her fingers trembled. He steadied them without taking over. The blood was warm, sticky. He guided her hands. Tighter, good. Now breathe. He unwound a piece of horsehair rope, tied a hitch that looked like art, and said, "See that? Holds fast, don't choke." She nodded, sweat sliding down her neck. When she leaned back, the colt's breathing slowed. The rope held. Cole wiped his hands on the dirt and met her eyes. His gaze flicked to the glint at her throat. The locket had swung open, the violet trembling inside. "Keepsake?" he asked. "Promise," she said. He didn't press her for more, and she was grateful. Because the rest of that promise lived in grave dirt and memory. A brother mangled by a cotton gin, a mother who froze before spring. The violet was all that hadn't rotted. By afternoon, the air thickened, full of horseflies and thunder that refused to break. Jeb and Rook practiced their draw again, laughing too loud, their eyes cutting toward the tack-room door. Tyrell rode in from the east, mailbag over one shoulder and a smirk that pretended charm. He greeted Cole like a man greeting his reflection. "Fine weather for charity work," he said, nodding toward Eliza. Cole didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was enough to make Tyrell's grin thin out. But the look he left her with said he'd already calculated her worth. When the sun bled down, the ranch settled into uneasy quiet. May sang low while scrubbing the pot, a tune too old to have words. Eliza carried feed to the corral, watching the light stretch long shadows across the dust. She could feel Cole's gaze on her, not ownership, not pity, just presence. Like a man counting seconds before the storm finally broke. That night, she lay in the tack room again. The cot creaked. The air was heavy, holding the smell of oil and rain yet to fall. She slid the derringer from beneath her pillow, turned it over in her palm, tiny and perfect. Then she traced her violet through the locket's crack, the edges dry as paper. "Can care grow in soil this mean?" she whispered. No answer came but the moan of the windmill and the quiet breath of a man keeping watch somewhere beyond the door. The river wasn't much, just a silver ribbon slipping through cottonwoods, but it carried the smell of something cleaner than the past. Eliza breathed it in and felt her lungs ease, the sting of dust and humiliation thinning in the air. Cole Mercer was already knee-deep at the bend, stacking tin cans on a fallen log. "Not for show," he said. "For keeping yourself alive." He handed her the revolver, its weight surprising, almost human. She held it awkwardly. He stepped behind her, one hand at each elbow. Two hands. "Breathe on the exhale. Listen." His voice was quiet, worn smooth by disuse, but it carried. The first shot cracked wild into the grass. Birds rose screaming. She flinched. He didn't move. "Again," he said. The second shaved tin sent a can wobbling. "Better." The third shot rang clean and pure, the sound carrying down the river like a bell calling something home. They both stared at the log. The last can spun once, then lay still. Cole stepped back. "Good," he said simply. Eliza lowered the gun, surprised by the ache in her arms and the strange steadiness in her chest. Wind rustled the cottonwoods, shaking sunlight through the leaves like old coins. They sat on the riverbank, not facing each other. Truth was easier when you shared a horizon. Eliza told him about the letter that had come to the mill, how it had been passed around the sewing tables, the women snickering at her name written in looping ink. A marriage offer, they'd called it. A miracle for the coughing girl. She'd laughed too, but later in the dark, she'd folded the paper and packed her small life in a flour sack. East meant drowning slow, she said. West meant maybe. Cole nodded once, eyes on the water. He didn't offer pity, only understanding. After a long while, he said, "Cavalry left me a mark." He turned his head slightly, showing the pale scar at his throat, a thin curve where a bullet had kissed flesh and taken part of his voice. Didn't much care for talking after that. Eliza studied him, the silence between them now shaped, not empty. Above, a hawk cut circles in the pale blue. The wind rose and carried the river smell across the meadow. Eliza unfastened her locket. The hinge squeaked softly. Inside, the violet lay pressed and brittle, its purple turned smoke gray. This was the last flower from a spring that didn't come back, she said. Her voice shook, half from nerves, half from saying too much. "If I bloom again, don't laugh." Cole looked at the violet, then at her. His expression didn't change, but something in the set of his shoulders softened. "I won't," he said. It was the kind of promise that sounded small, but it carried the weight of someone who didn't speak unless it counted. The sun leaned west. Shadows stretched. The hawk's cry echoed once, sharp as a warning. Cole stood, scanned the tree line. He couldn't see it, but in the willow fringe beyond the bend, a glint caught light. Tyrell Thatch watched through the narrow slit between leaves, cigarette glowing faint in the shade. He saw the space between the two figures at the river, saw what was filling it, and smiled the way a man does when he finds something he can sell. Eliza didn't notice. She was loading the revolver again, slow and careful, hands steadier now. Cole adjusted the last can on the log. "Again?" he asked. She nodded, lifted the gun, drew a breath that didn't hitch. The shot cracked across the meadow, echoing like faith learning to trust itself. The first raindrops came thick and slow, like they'd forgotten what falling meant. They splattered on the porch roof and quit, leaving the air heavy enough to drown in. Inside the cookhouse, May Quinn slapped a damp telegram onto the table so hard the coffee cups jumped. "Found it jammed behind the feed barrel," she said. "Looks like somebody wanted it lost." Cole looked up from mending his stirrup leather. Tyrell Thatch turned from the window, that lazy grin sliding into place like a mask. Eliza felt the air change, the way it does before lightning hits. The paper was half burnt, corners curled and black. Ink ran like blood in water, but the words that survived made the room shrink to silence. Girl arrived Harrow's End as planned. Sheriff paid. Keep Mercer close. Joke will draw him out. Witness must not reach Black Mesa. Nobody spoke. The storm outside grumbled low, teasing thunder it never meant to deliver. May crossed herself without meaning to. Tyrell reached for the telegram, his thumb brushing the table's edge. Cole's hand landed first, flat and quiet but final. For a moment they looked like statues carved from different sins. Tyrell all polish and lie, Cole all bone and weather. "Yours?" Cole asked. Tyrell smiled the way men smile before they spit. "Mail gets mixed out here," May's jaw tightened. "Don't play dumb, boy." "They were baiting you, Cole." Eliza felt her pulse drum in her throat. The sheriff's smirk at the auction. The jeers. The coin that changed hands too easy. It all snapped into focus. She'd been a lure. A cruel joke with a heartbeat. A name in a telegram bought and sold to drag a man like Cole Mercer out of hiding. Her knees went weak. She remembered another letter, the one that had started it all, the marriage offer sent to the mill, the one with fancy handwriting and a flourish beneath the name. A name she hadn't understood then but did now. Thatch. Tyrell saw her face change and knew she'd pieced it together. His grin turned thin as razor wire. Cole stood. The chair legs scraped the floor like gunmetal. His voice, when it came, was low and rough. "I rode with the Thatches once, 19, hungry, didn't know humor from cruelty yet." He glanced at Eliza, then the floor. "They like to laugh. At pain, at fear. At folks too poor to matter. I left when the joke burned a barn down, with a family still in it." His hand found the telegram again. "They don't forgive men who walk away clean." No one moved. Outside, the windmill groaned, each turn like a moan from the past. Eliza swallowed hard. "My brother," she said. The words barely made it out. "He was hung by Deputy Pike for stealing a horse that wasn't his. There was another man there. Paid. Gave the signal." She looked at Tyrell. "I remember his boots." Tyrell eased his thumb under his belt, lazy as a cat stretching. "Careful, miss," he said, voice honeyed with malice. "Memory's a tricky animal." Cole stepped between them. "That's enough," Tyrell chuckled. "What's it to you? You think the sheriff won't come collecting? That coat won't hide her long." He pointed with his chin toward Eliza. "You hand me the girl. I'll tell Maddox you're clear. You both live to ride away. That's fair trade. Fair?" May spat the word like a curse. "After what you pulled?" Tyrell ignored her. His eyes were on the coat draped around Eliza's shoulders, the same coat Cole had thrown over her at the auction. "You always did have a weakness for strays," he said. "But this one's poison." "I know it." Cole didn't blink. "She's a witness," he said. "And you just told me why they want her quiet." Tyrell's smile faltered for half a heartbeat. Then it came back slower this time. "You can't save her, Mercer. You couldn't save that family, neither." May stepped closer to Eliza, her limp tapping out a warning. "We best pack," she muttered. "Before the law comes calling." Cole nodded once. "He's right about one thing. Sheriff Maddox won't wait long. He turned to Eliza. "You trust me?" Eliza wanted to answer, but words wouldn't form. Trust wasn't easy when men had made her into a punchline. But the coat still held his warmth, and something in his eyes said he'd rather die honest than live easy. She nodded. Tyrell took a step forward, hand brushing the butt of his pistol. "Last chance, Mercer." "Hand her over!" Cole's revolver cleared leather faster than breath. He didn't aim it, just held it low, the hammer half-cocked, the message plain. May broke the spell, slamming the telegram into the stove. Fire bit quick, turning secrets into smoke. "You want her?" she said. "Come through me first," Tyrell hesitated. The storm broke its promise outside, letting a single sheet of rain rattle the tin roof before dying again. In the quiet that followed, the violet inside Eliza's locket trembled. She could almost smell its faint sweetness, impossible in this room of sweat and smoke. It felt like the world holding its breath. Cole backed toward the door. "We ride before dark," he said. May nodded. "I'll pack the rest." "Take the north trail. Keep off the flats." Tyrell didn't move. Just watched them, eyes calculating, cold. As Cole passed him, Tyrell said under his breath, "You won't make it to Black Mesa. Maddox will be waiting." Cole paused. The door opened to gray light and wind. "Then I'll bring him something he don't expect," he said. They stepped out together. Cole, Eliza, the smell of rain clinging to them both. Behind them, the windmill creaked again, its long arms turning slow, like the clock of fate winding up for another cruel joke. The violet shivered once more inside its locket, and Eliza wondered how many bullets or prayers it would take to keep its promise alive. Morning came limping over the plains, gray and mean. The air smelled of iron and dew that wouldn't last. Cole Mercer was already awake, boiling coffee that tasted like dirt and resolve when the knock came. 3 polite raps that didn't fit the hour. May froze at the stove. Cole looked at her, then at the door. Another knock, this one heavier. When he opened it, Sheriff Maddox stood framed against the light. Clean boots, legal smile, 12 men in dusters behind him like a storm that learned to walk. He held a paper folded neat as a prayer. "Morning, Mercer," he said, voice smooth as creek ice. "Warrant signed and proper. Miss Rowan's wanted for perjury. You for obstructing an officer." He tucked the paper back into his coat as if it were nothing more than housekeeping. "Now nobody wants ugliness. Hand the girl over. I'll see she's kept safe, and maybe your brand stays unscorched." Behind him, horses snorted, men shifting, boots grinding gravel. Tyrell Thatch stood off to one side, sleeves rolled, washing his hands slow in a tin basin like this was any other morning. He didn't look up. Cole's reply came low and steady. "No." Not a shout, just final. Maddox's smile didn't change, but his eyes thinned. He tipped his hat. "A pity. I was offering kindness." He nodded once, and his men spread, quiet and sure. By the time the dust settled, they'd roped off the corral, posted rifles by the well, and set camp along the fence line. Hardpan Ranch was a trap without hinges. May moved first. She slid a scattergun across the table toward Cole. He took it like an old friend. Jeb and Rook hovered near the door, whispering, eyes flicking between Maddox's men and Tyrrell's impassive face. Loyalty, Eliza thought, was cheaper out here than whiskey. Hours crawled by. The sun climbed, turning the yard into a skillet. Thirst grew fangs. Maddox lounged under his awning, whittling a stick, waiting for surrender to ripen. At noon he called across the yard. "We'll parley at sundown. No shooting, no tricks." He smiled, teeth bright. "A gentleman's word," Cole nodded once. Sundown. It wasn't agreement. It was delay. Sighed. May rummaged through drawers until she found a biscuit tin dented from years of use. Cole sat at the table, writing in blocky letters while Eliza dictated. Names, dates, what she saw in Harrow's End, the sheriff's part in her brother's hanging, the truth behind the telegram. The paper filled fast with bloodless confessions. When they were done, Eliza folded it careful, her fingers shaking. May took the tin, sealed it, and smiled with grim pride. "I know where men never look," she said. "They're scared of the dark under a woman's bed." Outside, the day burned out slow. Lanterns flared along the ridge. The posse grew louder, men laughing, waiting for the kill. Sundown came like a bruise. Eliza stepped into the yard beside Cole, his coat around her shoulders. The same coat that had once hidden her from a crowd's laughter. Now it felt like armor, and a target. Maddox stood under the windmill, hat off, expression all patience. He'd brought half the town as witnesses. Merchants, drovers, men who'd love to see a legend broken. Tyrell moved forward from their line, hands raised, palms open, a preacher's pose. No need for blood, he said. Give me the girl. I'll see she isn't hurt. His tone almost kind. Almost. Eliza stared past him toward the cottonwoods, where the river would be whispering its calm secrets. For a heartbeat, she could almost smell water and forgiveness. Cole's voice broke that quiet. Promise on your mother. Tyrell blinked once. Then again. His pupils flickered, just enough. That was all the answer anyone needed. May muttered, Here it comes. The first match flared near the hay shed, one spark against all that dry tinder. Smoke coiled upward, tasting of betrayal. The crowd stirred. Someone shouted. Maddox didn't order it stopped. He just smiled wider, as though the fire were proof of his law. The crack of the first rifle shot split the air. Splinters jumped from the porch rail. Eliza grabbed Cole's sleeve. What do we do? He didn't flinch. His eyes tracked the flames catching on the barn eaves. When I move, he said softly. Move. The windmill turned slow above them, metal crying against metal. Smoke thickened, curling low. Every gate around them gleamed with gun barrels. There was nowhere to run that wasn't straight through hell, and still, Eliza gripped his coat tighter, waiting for him to move. The world broke open in noise and fire. Horses screamed. Bullets tore the air to ribbons. The windmill spun wild, blades catching red light and turning it to shrapnel. Cole yanked Eliza down behind the watering trough, gravel biting her palms, breath hot with gunpowder and fear. Stay low, he rasped. The first volley chewed the fence rails to splinters. Wood hissed past her ear. She clutched the derringer, too small for war, but enough to feel like a choice. Cole peeked over the edge, eyes reading the fight like scripture, counting shots, listening for the reload gaps the way a musician listens for silence between notes. 3 left, he muttered. Then they breathed. He moved when the firing faltered, sprinting through smoke. May Quinn burst from the cookhouse, apron flapping like a battle flag. She seized the dinner bell rope and rang it hard, clang after clang, metal screaming into the chaos. The sound carried through the paddocks, spooking every horse and steer within earshot. Cattle surged forward, a living wall of hooves and terror. Maddox's men shouted, trampled each other, lost formation. The sheriff cursed, firing wild to reassert control. Tyrrell Thatch broke from cover, sprinting along the corral's edge. Get around him, he barked. Cut him off. Jeb and Rook froze, 2 boys staring at the price of courage. Then they turned, slow as regret, and raised their hands toward Maddox's line. Don't shoot! Rook yelled. We ain't with him. Eliza felt her stomach turn cold. Betrayal, neat as a ledger entry. Cole didn't look back. He shoved open the windmill gate, motioning her inside. Blood darkened his shirt where a bullet had grazed his ribs, but he moved like pain was something owed, not felt. Up, he said. The ladder bit her palms. Iron rungs slick with dust and oil. Bullets clanged off the frame as she climbed, sparks jumping like hornets. Cole followed, breathing harsh, boots ringing against metal. From the platform, the ranch spread below them, a battlefield painted in smoke and sun. They could see the corral half on fire, May still hammering the bell, cattle scattering like torn prayer beads. Beyond that, the scrubland stretched toward the dry wash, freedom. If they could make it before the wind shifted. Eliza turned, mouth open to speak, but a voice rose from below, Sheriff Maddox, loud and pleased. Bring the rope. The words crawled up her spine. A deputy tossed the coil skyward. It swung from the crossbeam, a noose, simple and obscene, swaying in rhythm with the spinning blades. A joke turning back into punishment. Tyrell stepped forward, shading his eyes. Walk the girl down, Cole, he called. No one needs 2 bodies swinging. Cole didn't answer. He looked at Eliza instead. For a second, the world fell silent. All the wind, all the shots, gone. He brushed her hair back, pressed his lips to her forehead. Quick, like returning something borrowed. Then he moved. He dropped to the gear housing, booth heels scraping metal. The windmill's heart clattered and groaned beneath his weight. He pulled the horsehair rope from his belt and jammed it through the drive gears. The machinery screamed. The blades above them lurched to a stop mid-turn, shuddering under the strain. The noose swung wild, tightening, snapping, wrapping itself around the crossbar like a snake choking its own tail. Maddox shouted below, voice cracked with fury. "Shoot them down!" Eliza crouched low, heart hammering. Smoke burned her eyes. The Derringer felt tiny, foolish, but she saw what Cole meant to do and didn't hesitate. "Now," he said. She fired. The shot struck the pulley block, a single clean hit. The metal screamed, tore free, and the rope lashed out in a wild whip. One end caught a deputy's face. Another struck a lantern, sending flame leaping into the dry hay stacked along the fence. Then came the dust. It rose like judgment, red, thick, alive. A wall of earth and smoke and panic, born from hooves and windmill blades and every sin in the valley. It swallowed men whole. Through the swirl, Eliza saw shapes, Maddox reeling backward. Terrell shouting orders no one could hear, May still at the bell. Pounding until her arms failed. Cole's blood streaked the metal near her hands. "Go," he said, voice shredded. "I can't go!" Another shot tore the air. The platform shook. Eliza stumbled, caught herself on a rung, looked back, and he was gone. No body, no fall. Just gone. The dust storm rolled over the yard, the windmill screeching in protest. The bell swung wild, ringing itself mad. Eliza gripped the ladder, coughing, calling his name into the storm. No answer. Only the howl of wind through metal and rope. She climbed down into red chaos, blind, stumbling. Every breath was grit. Every sound was loss. When at last the wind dropped and the sun fought its way through, the ranch was unrecognizable. The windmill leaned, broken. The corral was ash and hoofprints. May was kneeling beside the wreck of the dinner bell, her hands raw. Eliza staggered forward, searching the yard. No Cole. Only his hat, half buried in dust, and the coat still on her shoulders, heavy with his blood. She pressed her fingers to the locket at her throat, the violet inside crushed flat from the climb. "Did he fall or jump?" She looked at the red horizon and whispered the question to the wind, but it gave no answer, only carried the taste of him away into the empty miles. Spring came quiet, like it didn't want to startle the ghosts. Hardpan's yard wore a fuzz of green, the first it had seen in years. The windmill turned slow and peaceful, creaking the way old bones sigh when pain forgets them for a while. The air smelled of damp earth and smoke long gone cold. Sheriff Maddox had become a story. One man told careful, glancing over shoulders, lowering voices when his name rose. Tyrell Thatch rode west with scars he'd earned and no one to brag to. Jeb and Rook vanished in the dark, leaving nothing behind but bootprints and guilt. May planted a kitchen patch beside the porch and muttered over it in words older than English. Eliza tended a patch of her own, a small square of dirt by the trough where dust had once lifted red as judgment. In its center lay her locket, open to the sun, the violet inside long crushed to brown, spent but not forgotten. Beside it, she pressed new violet seed into the soil, ones Cole had found in a saddlebag pocket after he came back from the dead, because he hadn't died. At dawn that next day, he'd limped out of the dry wash, mud clinging to his chest, blood dried like rust on his ribs. He smiled, barely a curve, just enough to remind her that silence could be tender too. Maddox's warrant dissolved in the rain that followed. For once, truth ran faster than fear. Now morning light bent around them like a benediction. Cole stepped up behind her, close enough that his breath warmed her neck. He laid his coat over her shoulders again. Habit, vow, shelter. "They sent you as a joke," he murmured, voice rough as matchlight. A pause. The wind shivered the cottonwoods. "But nothing about you is funny." He hesitated, then finished the words he'd whispered the night he saved her. "Stay," he said, "if you want." Eliza touched the soil where the first violet broke through, purple as a bruise turning into a flower, and wondered, without fear this time, what might bloom if she said yes.